Welcome back, you all, for Chapter 28, Guiding Field Trip Experiences. Young children have limited experience in understanding their world. Much of what they understand comes from books, pictures, television, the internet, and movies. Although these media help children learn about their world, they do not replace real-world experiences. To fully understand their world, young children need concrete experiences to connect them with their community. Nothing is as valuable as real-life learning. Young children need to see, hear, feel, taste, and smell the world around them. The more senses children use, the more likely they are to learn. Children gain firsthand experiences during field trips. They are able to look at, listen to, smell, touch, and feel their world. As children connect words and concepts with real objects, people, and places, vague concepts become clearer to them. Field trips also help children build keener observation skills, build their vocabularies, clarify concepts as new information is learned. They learn about their community. They take part in multi-sensory experiences. They gain new insights for their dramatic play, learn about their environment, and practice following directions within a group. For young children, field trips can be a very new experience. Children may be unfamiliar with the idea of a field trip and thus be a little apprehensive or anxious about what will occur. For this reason, children's first field trips should be short, not in non-threatening neighborhoods like local places, okay? Short and local. One good idea for a first field trip is a theme walk. Theme walks are simple field trips involving walks near the center or the school based on a certain theme. Theme walks provide an opportunity for children to sharpen their observational skills. Before starting a theme walk, talk about what the children might observe. If the theme is buildings, then tell the children to observe the types of buildings they see. They may see houses, apartments, offices, stores, service stations, that kind of thing. Color is also a good concept for a theme walk. You may take a shape walk where you teach children about shapes. Theme walks can also be based on numbers and letters and can be very useful learning experiences. People walks is another good one. You can teach many social concepts. The children will see that people may be tall or short, have different color eyes and hair. So those are just some examples of just taking those quick walking theme trips. The trip you select should depend on the ages of the children, the location of the site, and the budget that you have available. Field trips are sometimes based on the season or weather. Field trips are sometimes chosen based on the curriculum themes that are being studied within your center or classroom. For instance, a trip to the farm may be chosen while children are studying about farms, food, or machinery. Before choosing a trip, you need to ask yourself this question: how appropriate is the trip for the children? Consider the developmental level of the children. Field trips for children under 24 months are often simple walks around the neighborhood or around the center. For safety purposes, you might want to use strollers for those children. When selecting field trips for young children, you need probably to avoid crowded locations and choose trips that provide learning through participation. Children enjoy touching and doing things. When selecting a field trip, always figure the cost. This helps you decide if the trip is the best use for your resources. Costs for transportation can vary greatly depending on the type used. So if your center has its own transportation like vans and that kind of thing, then of course the cost of the trip is going to be less. But if you have to pay for school buses or pay for a charter bus, then sometimes that trip just becomes too expensive to make. Field trips can also be selected based on the resource people available. Resource people are visitors to a classroom or field trip hosts. To be most useful, resource people need an orientation before meeting the children. This is a necessary step for making the experience a success for both the children and the resource people. Tell the resource people the number of children in your group, their interests, ages, and length of their attention spans. Suggest some questions that they may ask the children. After a resource person has visited your classroom or hosted you on a field trip, always send a thank you note or some other form of appreciation. Successful field trips for young children need to be carefully planned. Consideration should be given to safety, scheduling, adult-child ratios, behavioral expectations, educational goals, and the children's preparation. As a teacher, you need to think about all of these factors. A good way to do this is to take a pre-trip to the site before in preparation for your field trip. The success of any trip depends on preparation. So after you set your goals, always make a pre-trip if you have never been to the site or to that particular location for a trip. Your trip or pre-trip will allow you to look and see, so you can describe your purpose of the trip to the tour guide, make sure that it's going to meet your purpose. Explain the children's interests and their needs, locate the bathrooms. It doesn't have adequate bathrooms for your children. Check to see if there's any kind of potential dangers that might be there so that you can know, well, maybe this is not a great place to go for that age group children. Maybe the parking. What's the parking look like for your van or your bus? Do they have parking for a large bus? Sometimes you may go on your pre-trip and then have to come back and revise your plans for you can still go to that location, but you may have said, okay, well, you know what, like they don't have adequate picnic tables, or they don't have a place for us to sit and eat our lunch. So we're going to need to change the time so that we're not there during time. So pre-trip is a definite must, okay? Before the trip, you need to also make sure you have a trip bag. A trip bag should include the essential supplies that you will need to take along. Paper towels, tissues, first aid kits, towelettes, garbage bags, emergency contacts, cell phone, that kind of thing. Many schools and centers also require that you take a folder with their emergency forms and their signed permission slips. Depending on the length of the trip and the weather, you may also want to take snacks or refreshments for the children. Carefully plan around the children's needs, their schedules, and the resource people's schedules, and this takes time. However, a well-planned field trip produces the greatest amount of learning and pleasure for the children. To ensure safety and success of the trip, provide enough chaperones. The most desirable adult-child ratio is based on the number of children in the group, the age of the children, and the nature of the trip and the dangers that may be involved. Behavioral expectations need to be planned and discussed with the children before the trip. Expectations for the children to follow will vary with the children and the nature of your trip. Some expectations may apply to all trips. Regardless of the type of trip, expectations are most often the same in most early childhood programs. For best results, state all expectations in a positive way. Tell the children exactly what they must do. For example, tell the children to place their hands by their sides when they are in the store. The first expectation for field trips is that all children must wear an identification tag, some kind of name tag, and at all times. And they need to be durable so that they don't fall off, or be careful. Sometimes people buy those little stickers, like maybe you might get at Dollar Tree or Dollar General, that kind of thing, and they lose their sticky very easily and they roll up. Okay, so you want something that is very durable. A lot of times people get children like a lanyard type thing where they have a name tag that says their first and last name, what school they're with, that kind of thing. Tell them that when they're on the field trip, they have to use their inside voices. They have to speak softly. They have to stay with their group. They cannot leave their group. Okay, and so whatever group they're assigned to and whatever adult they're with, they have to stay with them at all times. Hold a hand rule, that sometimes is our partner rule, you know. But you just need to make sure, based on the age of the children, field trips are a wonderful thing, but if you don't prepare, especially with the behavioral expectations and how they're going to conduct themselves, sometimes it can be dangerous. For the most benefit on a field trip, educational goals must be carefully planned and well focused. For example, a trip to a local auto repair shop may have a number of goals. to observe the mechanics at work, learn about the care of cars, see how machinery works, to learn vocabulary words like technician, wrenches, ramps, and hoist. So you want to make sure that you have those goals well planned. Preparation for children may begin a few days before the trip. Introduce the trip by putting up displays, reading a book, sharing some videos, looking at pictures, or just simply having discussions about what they're going to see while on their trip. Parents, of course, need to be informed about well in advance of field trips, on your newsletter, your calendar, maybe on the bulletin board outside of your hallway, reminding them that this is going to happen. Most centers, most schools are going to require a field trip permission form where all the specifics you provide, and they must sign their signature and date it saying they give their children permission to go on the trip. Sometimes they ask for medical release forms, that kind of thing. Make sure that if you are working in a center or school that you are very well aware of what their field trip policy is, okay? What I like the idea, your book gives an idea of post a sign on your classroom door on the morning of the field trip before the parents and the children arrive. Note where the trip is, what time you'll be departing and returning, just as a little reminder. I thought that was a really good idea. And one thing a lot of people forget about are follow-up activities. Okay, you've done all your prep, you've gone on the trip, you're back, now what? So in order for the trip to really have the educational value you want it to, you need some follow-up activities. So to help them, and follow-up activities just simply help the children clarify their learning. So once you return to your center, you might talk about them about what they saw, what they heard, what they experienced. So plan some activities that reinforce the learning that occurred on the trip. And then this is, like we said earlier, is a great place where maybe they can write a thank you note, include a picture, all sign their name, whatever. Field trips cannot be offered by some centers due to lack of funding, supervision, or logistics. Teachers in these programs have the option of offering virtual field trips to support the children's interest and expand their social worlds beyond the classroom. Virtual field trips are technology-based experiences that allow children an educational excursion without leaving the classroom. There are two types. One is called a pre-developed virtual field trip. A pre-developed virtual field trip has been prepared by an outside source. One of them that comes to mind for me is the Atlanta Aquarium. They have some webcams in there where you can actually watch the beluga whales in their tank at all times. You can watch the seals. So those are great pre-developed virtual trips. The second type is a teacher-created virtual field trip. Some sites, such as maybe shoe factories, clothing factories, canning factories, are too dangerous for children to visit. In these cases, after obtaining permission, a teacher may go to such sites and record a virtual field trip using, just using your cell phone, or maybe taking photos. Another wonderful idea is to make sure that if you're not the photographer, that you designate an adult, and that is what they do. They're just going to take photos of the trip, the children interacting with all the things that were going on. Whatever your educational goals were and whatever was planned for the children to do, catch them in picture, okay? So because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And after the trip, the children enjoy looking at photographs and reliving their trip, and thus remembering all the things that they learned on their trip. So having someone take pictures in the classroom is a wonderful idea. Of course, this is also one of those places where you want to make sure that your center has that statement from parents that's okay for their children to be photographed. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter of Guiding Field Trip Experiences, and I will make sure you check your Blackboard for all other information that is related to this chapter. Thanks again for joining me.